Germany has decided. Olaf Scholz's governing coalition crashed. The three parties all punished with historically low numbers. And the big winner is Friedrich Merz and his centre-right Christian Democrats. He must now forge a new coalition government and lead Europe's biggest economy out of its current crisis. He also needs to take the lead in Europe, countering an increasingly hostile White House. But the other big winner is the far-right AfD, nearly doubling its share of the vote to around 20%, helped in no small measure by vocal support from Donald Trump and Elon Musk. But Merz vowed he will under no circumstance work with the far right. Today on To The Point, we ask, Friedrich Merz to the rescue. Is he the man to fix Europe's broken backbone? Hello and welcome to this special edition of To The Point, one day after Germany's general election. I'm Gerhard Elfers. Good to have you with us. Let me introduce my panel today. Kerstin Münstermann. She leads the parliamentary bureau of Rheinische Post. That's a regional daily newspaper here in Germany. Gordon Ripinski, the executive editor Germany for Politico, a news website. And Daniel Goffard, chief correspondent Europe for Wirtschaftswoche Business Weekly here in Germany. Very warm welcome to all of you. Let's start. We've heard the result. What does this result say about the current political mood in Germany?
Yeah. The current political mood is a mood of change. It's not a wind of change, but a vote of change. I think the people of Germany was fed up with the Ampel politics, with the center-left politics we saw the last 3 years. And, well, they decided for a change, but the center lost yesterday. And the far right gained a lot of votes. So it will be very hard to rule in the coming years.
But it's not a radical change, is it? It's a sort of slight correction to the right, but it's not a radical change.
In terms of the possible coalition, I wouldn't say it's a radical change, because now you have the opportunity to have a relatively stable government of the Conservatives and the Social Democrats. But that happened by chance, we have to say. Also because one of the newer populist parties, the BSW, so the former socialist leader Sarah Wagenknecht and her group, just barely didn't make it into the parliament. If that had, gone out differently, then we would stand in a completely different situation. But we have to see that the AfD has nearly doubled. The sort of piece of cake in the parliament that we will see from above is now a really huge one, and that will change the political debate. And obviously, there's a lot of pressure on the new government to govern more successfully than the Ampel coalition did before, because otherwise we will see a more radical change in 4 years, to say in this metaphor.
Now, the CDU and Friedrich Merz, of course, are the clear winners. Not as big as they had hoped. They didn't even reach the 30%. So why is that?
He makes several mistakes, strategic mistakes. The last was the vote together with the AfD in questions of migration. And I think that a few of his possible voters in the center lose the confidence that he will never go all along on the side on the AfD. And that may be the reason, because he loses 1 or 2%. He owns in all the polls before. When we remember the weeks before, we have 31, 32 and even more percent for Friedrich Merz and his party. But now it's clear under this magic 30% limit what he himself expected. And I think one of the reasons is the strategic mistake voting together with the AfD.
And the voters didn't like him so much. He, he is not such a handsome guy. He's very tall. He sometimes seems to be arrogant and goes very forward. He's not very polite. So he wasn't the ideal candidate for the Christian Democratic Union.
Not the natural.
Yeah, he only represents a part of his own party. If you see, you can divide this party into 3 parts, and he is the the right-wing part, the economic part, and he is not a representative of the center part, people joining the churches, even the women in the CDU. And this is the maximum result you can have with a candidate like him. But that was clear before.
Let's have a closer look at the new man who will, in all likelihood, be in charge of Germany for the next 4 years. Who is Friedrich Merz?
Friedrich Merz. He's the victor in this federal election. With the CDU-CSU Conservative Alliance, he secured 29% of the vote. We've won this 2025 federal election. Yet it's a poor showing, the second worst election result in the party's history. Still, Merz hopes to forge a governing coalition swiftly, ideally before Easter, preferably with the Social Democrats. The world won't wait for us. It won't wait for long, drawn-out coalition negotiations. We must be capable of acting again quickly, so we can do the right thing in Germany, so that we are present again in Europe, and so that the world sees Germany has a reliable government again. And that led by a conservative who has held the economy front and centre his entire political career. Friedrich Merz, a polarising figure who's taken his share of political blows, including from Angela Merkel. Disappointed, Merz returned to his business career. Then a political comeback. In 2022, he became leader of the CDU, then their candidate for Chancellor. As winner of this election, will Merz be able to unify a polarised country, get the economy back on track, and strengthen Germany against a currently harsh international climate?
Now, is he the right man to stiffen Europe's backbone?
He's the only man at the moment because there's no alternative in Germany. And I think he has a lot of experience in political questions. He was...
Even though he never held office?
He never held an office, but that will not mean that he had no experience in governing a country, but he has a lot of political experience. He started his career in the European Parliament, so he has a long view on Europe, and then he managed to be the leader of the fraction of the parliamentary group in his first role. And then after this, he had 10 years break from politics. He was advocate. He was a manager of a big company in the US, and he collected a lot of experience in the corporate community, and he has a lot of close relationships to American political scene as well. He was the chairman of the Atlantic Bridge, which is a well-known association here in Germany. And so he has a lot of experience in political questions. He do not have experience in governing a country. And that is something he had to learn. He had to make compromises. He had to saw lines and to follow these long lines for strategic questions, especially in Europe. And we will see what will come out.
He, in all likelihood, will form a coalition with the Social Democrats. How big of a gap is there politically between the two parties?
There is a gap, certainly on the crucial questions of the upcoming 4 years, which are migration and economic reform. I don't think it's something that is not possible to be solved. I mean, obviously the approaches on migration policy are very different. I think that what the Social Democrats tried to do in the past 4 years was to enhance more strict migration policies, but within the legal framework, whereas the Conservative Party and Friedrich Merz itself sort of challenged the legal framework.
The European legal framework, that is.
Yeah. I mean, but mostly the European legal framework when it came to rejecting illegal migrants at the national borders. That is the most predominant point in that regard. So that will be quite a discussion, how to really make a visible step forward without violating international or European law. On economic reform, I think the approaches are very different. The traditional conservative approach would be rather go into reducing social benefits, making a leaner creating a leaner state, whereas the Social Democrats would rather go into spending. I think you can combine the two, but then you obviously need more money. So we're in the middle of, I think, the most crucial question in Germany, which is like how to organize the finances and the budget. And I think this will be the first of all questions.
We're going to come to that in a moment. But first, I'd like to ask, Merz said yesterday that we're going to have a new government by Easter. You know the SPD quite well. How likely is that?
I doubt it because, well, there's now a break. There's Carnival. We have an election coming up next Sunday in Hamburg, and the Social Democrats are about to win the state. So they really want to keep it calm now. And it will take a while because if the Social Democrats, who are really defeated now, go into such a coalition, it will take time because they have to ask their members. Maybe there's a Parteitag, party convention, and they have to decide: do we go this with Friedrich Merz or we don't? So
negotiations will be difficult, will they not?
They will be very difficult, and the Social Democrats are now choosing their team to go into these talks. And there's Lars Klingbeil, the party leader. He will be a crucial person, and Boris Pistorius, the Minister of Defense. And so they build a team, but it will be hard for them.
Are those the two to watch in the SPD now?
Klingbeil and Pistorius, and there are others like Matthias Mirsch. He's the general secretary of the party, and there are some women, of course. Saskia Esken, she is still party leader, co-leader. It will be hard for her. I don't know if she survives all the circumstances, but well, there are others, but it's not. It's only 3.
They've suffered a historical defeat, and yet
they did
come out as one of the winners because they're still in government as it looks.
No one else
as it looks now. But let's bring in the other big winner of this evening. That's the far right AfD, doubling their share of the vote to around 20%. That's another historic first. They will be in opposition, but how big will their influence be?
Oh, quite big, because you see out from the result of the national election, it's 20%. So each fifth voter vote for AfD. And if you see the map of Germany, in Eastern Germany, it's all blue. It's nearly every part is the AfD is the first in the row. And this will be a heavy problem, especially in the eastern parts of Germany. So on the other hand, 80% of the Germans said no to the AfD, and that is a quite big majority. And so you have to take it into relation each other. Yeah? Don't underestimate them. Don't underestimate the consequences. We will see if the new government will be not successful. But I'm still optimistic that there will be. Everybody knows that it's the time to make some efforts, to make some step forwards, and they have to be successful in this. Otherwise, in the next elections, I fear there will be another result for the AfD.
Germany needs another mindset. Yeah. That's what they have to install.
Now, Merz has said he will not cooperate with the AfD, come what may. And yet, let's have a listen to what the AfD's leader, Alice Weidel, has to say to that.
I will say one thing. Our hand will always be outstretched to take part in government in order to enact the will of the people, the will of Germany.
Gordon, question for you. How long can a party be ignored and shunned that receives 20% of the vote?
Well, I'm not sure if they're being ignored. I mean, I think there's a decent majority against the AfD now. I don't think it's a revolution to see a great coalition, and I think it's logical that this is the first choice. I think if we had seen a more complicated situation than this, which would have been very possible, I think we would have had a debate within the Conservative Party, not in the leadership maybe, but on a lower level, whether it would be time to speak with AfD. And I think this is a situation, even though Friedrich Merz absolutely clearly and we can trust him here, ruled out to work together with AfD, there are other parts who think that this debate should be led at some point. What we will see, obviously, is if the government is not successful, then probably AfD will gain more votes. I think we are currently already in a situation where they almost made it to win constituencies in Western Germany. They did win constituencies in terms of the party vote, not in terms of the candidate vote. In Rheinland. In the southwest of Germany, in Kaiserslautern, and also particularly in the Ruhrgebiet, in the formerly industrial core of North Rhine-Westphalia. So there is a change that kind of flows over from Eastern Germany to Western Germany, and that's a serious situation. Again, I can just underline what Daniel Goffert said. It's all about the success of the next government. Only then the AfD numbers can go down.
And a measure of that success is, of course, how the economy is going. We've been 2 years in recession here in Germany. What's on Merz's economic to-do list?
Yeah, I think it's the classic program from a conservative party. It's cutting taxes. It's reducing bureaucracy. It tried to change the transformation of the industrial part in Germany. And the question is, what is more important? What has to be reached quicker or faster? The climate change or the situation of the industry? And this is, I think, the change he would try to make. The transformation of an industrial country like Germany is a very heavy task, and you have to be very exact in this. And the impression from Merz and his people and his party is that the Greens and the former government were too ambitious with that, losing control over other questions. And that will be, I think, the most important change, beside all these other facts I mentioned before.
One of the issues that the former coalition stumbled over was the so-called debt brake, which is enshrined in the German constitution, that limits the amount of borrowing that a government can do. There will be massive amounts of money needed for defense. That becomes clearer and clearer that is the case. Can the debt brake survive?
It will end. We will call it with another. It will be another name for it. But Friedrich Merz just gave signals that he is more than willing to invest in infrastructure, in security, in the army, and he will need the money. And the Social Democrats really like to get money from the market to invest in the country. They will do it.
Will that be enough?
The problem is that the majorities have changed to an extent that you don't have a constitutionally valid majority now in the new parliament to really make that significant change in terms of the
because you need a two-thirds majority.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. So you can't do that anymore. Now already creativity has started to get more important. Exactly.
That's the way it goes.
Sort of. I mean, the majority in the parliament changes on the day of the constitution of the new parliament. This will be within 4 weeks. But obviously, until then, you could technically find a majority and bring that change into reality. But that would also mean really fast negotiations and a solution on what to do with the money. So I think so far it's maybe a bit of a fantasy, but it shows what challenges are ahead of this new coalition.
I'm not quite sure if the first thing he wants to change is to give up his position comparing to the debt brake. Maybe this will be the result of further negotiations, of course, but it will not be the first thing. I expect that there will be other solutions because the majority is not available as you need, the two-thirds majority. And so there may be a way beside with a so-called emergency effect. So we can say, okay, we are now in a new global situation. The US government take away the umbrella to protect Europe, and we need more money for defense, and so we have another situation. And perhaps you can argue with that. It would be much more easier than to find a majority in the Bundestag along to the AfD and the left
But with Donald Trump in the White House, we will have a discussion about defense and what it costs, and what about our security, our army. Will we be ready for fighting against, I don't know, Russia in 7 years? So, and it costs money.
I mean, currently what we're experiencing here is a new government coming in for the first time with a real possibility of the security umbrella that the US have provided being pulled away. And I mean, the cards are really redistributed right now. Is Merz, in terms of his transatlantic views, is he better suited to deal with the Trump administration and Trump himself than, for example, Scholz would have been?
I doubt it, because his positive approach to the US and his deep understanding of the country has really rapidly changed after the words from Mr. Trump himself about the Ukraine, after Wentz's speech in Munich, and he definitely took another position towards the US government. So I think you cannot say, okay, Merz was a transatlantic guy, he was the chairman of the Atlantic Bridge, so he will get along with Trump. The only thing he can do is to be on the same level like Trump. So if you
seeing
say, okay,
eye to eye.
Yeah, seeing eye to eye and not to interfere to Trump and to go on the knees to the White House. That's the worst thing you can do. And that Merz, from his character and from the way he's taking politics, I think that will be a possibility for him, but that's the only one.
He also famously has a bit of a short fuse sometimes, not unlike the man in the White House. Do you think that'll help?
I don't think it's a disadvantage. I think it makes sense to play the same game with Donald Trump, and I think Friedrich Merz can much rather do that than his predecessor. So I think on that level, there's room for optimism that, you know, this very masculine game that probably will take place then in the White House or wherever they meet, you know, will be what it is. But that might also lead to a result. I mean, in terms of tariffs, Friedrich Merz was very outspoken already and say, okay, if he want to impose tariffs, we will do the same, and then the whole story will end. And the best world he could imagine would be if both lower tariffs. But on Ukraine, I mean, certainly Friedrich Merz will see more responsibility for Germany and for Europe if they want to keep up the support for Ukraine. That, again, requires a lot of money and a lot of investment, but I think there's no alternative if you want to keep the values high. And Friedrich Merz was very clear on that. He will support Ukraine the way that has happened before, even without the administration.
So today's result, yesterday's result, you say is good news for Ukraine?
No, I don't think it's good news for Ukraine. I think Olaf Scholz and Friedrich Merz are not very far away from each other. I think there's a continuity with maybe a bit of a percentage more support for Ukraine. But that's on low level, I think, for Ukraine. I mean, it's much more important what happens in the Senate or in the White House. And they can just hope that the Europeans get their things together to keep on supporting Ukraine.
Do you think that Germany can now become a stronger voice for the whole of Europe?
We hope so. I hope so. I think that there's a need for it. Olaf Scholz wasn't the strong voice for Germany in Europe, in Brussels. So I really hope Friedrich Merz and his ambition to be very clear to the French President Emmanuel Macron will help Germany and help France and help Europe.
Do you agree?
And don't forget, he's the conservative, and the majority in the European Parliament is from the European People's Party as well. The most of the commissioners are from the European People's Party, and from this view, he has some assistance and some help from these two very important institutions. On the other hand, of course, he had to make his compromises with the European leaders in the European Council, and we will see what he is able to do. But the expectations are very high, and what he must do is to take this German role, as it always is in Europe, take leadership but pay. So this is that's the combination you cannot.
I'd like to come to our final round, and I'd like to sum it up. Merz has to revamp the armed forces, kickstart the economy, cut back on social spending, loosen the debt brake, be a strong central figure in the EU, help face down Putin, stand up to, and at the same time charm Trump. Have I forgotten anything?
It's a mystery.
Has he just taken on the toughest gig in German post-war history?
I mean, he was running for chancellor, yes, of course. I mean, it's not only Germany, it's most of the Western democracies which are standing in front of the same challenges. And Friedrich Merz has done that. I think he's a lucky man because he can do that in a grand coalition and he doesn't have to form a three-party coalition. So, I mean, that's what he always wanted. Now he can start.
He's very self-confident, so he should fulfill
and
the
never
expectations.
have had any illusions about what comes to him. So I think he will do it.
So will he succeed, you reckon?
Well,
I hope so at
we
the
hope
end.
so.
But I don't lose any trust in him. I think he's a leader at that time.
I agree. I think we should be a bit optimistic and give him a chance. He's a new face and he should do the best.
And with that, we come to the end of today's program. Thank you very much to my panel and thank you for sharing your time with us. Do leave us a comment in the comment section if you're watching us on YouTube. That was To The Point today. I'm Gerhard Elfers. Thanks for watching.